Thank you, Remy. It's very kind of you. Quite like Queen of the Celtic Sea. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm Claire. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about our plans in Pembrokeshire. We've had some very exciting announcements recently, so I'm just going to touch on some of that information through my presentation. But first, a little bit about WaveHub Limited. Unlike my colleagues on the panel, we're actually a site developer and operator. So these folk hopefully will be my future customers. The company was set up in 2012, and our aims really are to help develop the sector. So we're a research organisation, we're primarily funded through the public sector, and we're here to help you to test and demonstrate your technology and ultimately move through what was often called the Valley of Death, so that you could demonstrate and commercialise your wave energy technology. And we also have a very important focus on the local community benefits that we could see flow from our activities both in Cornwall but also now in Pembrokeshire. So this is our prime site. It's the WaveHub test facility off the North Cornwall coast. It's already built. It was built in 2010. It's pre-consented, so over Section 36 consent. And it's fairly simple infrastructure, really, an onshore substation, a very long 25-kilometre subsea cable out to an 8-square-kilometre leased site that we have from the Crown Estate. It is a wave demonstration site. However, we are still continuing to explore the possibility of using the site for floating wind. It has been the beneficiary of the ERDF programme in Cornwall, and indeed it has been owned by central government. So previously the BIS department, now BEIS, who've been actually a very supportive shareholder over the last 5 years. So the reason why we built WaveHub was actually because you, the industry, told the South West RDA at the time that that's what we could do as the public sector to help you to develop your technology. It was actually to provide the shared infrastructure which would actually enable you to concentrate on what you know best, which is your technology. And this is just some outputs from some work that my friend Johnny from Region South West did for us, also working with the Crown Estate, which enabled us to demonstrate that actually you could develop your technology and test at the WaveHub site within a very short space of time compared to you starting from afresh with a new site. So in effect, we're helping, I hope, to take away some of your pain by doing the infrastructure work and the site preparation work for you. And that, in effect, will reduce, obviously, your costs. It reduces some of your risks, but ultimately, as this graph shows, it hopefully enables you to see a return sooner than had you been having to concentrate on developing your own site as well. So whilst we were in the process of building WaveHub and in the first couple of years of operating it, the industry was talking increasingly about the technology demonstration pathway, that they needed to move on with the idea that you would obviously start with your first device, your single device, but that you wanted to be able to build out over a phased approach to be able to ultimately prove that you had a commercially viable technology that could generate at scale. And that's effectively what WaveHub can enable you to do. It is a site where you could test up to 10 megawatts at the WaveHub site. But more recently, we're now seeing that there are developers actually talking about much larger scale projects. And we heard from Martin from Monesto talking about his plans. We've seen Atlantis in Scotland progressing a much larger scale project at Maygen. And so it made great sense to us to start to look at how we could build on WaveHub and actually provide a larger facility again for our customers that we were working with and were developing a relationship with. And with the foresight of the Crown Estate, there were a series of demonstration zones identified, and we successfully bid to become the third-party manager for Pembrokeshire. And that now will enable developers to start planning for the next phase on, so up to 30 megawatts for their wave arrays. It is primarily a wave site, but I should say that we are also in discussions with Crown Estate, and we will include this in our work going forward to see if we could use this for floating wind. I know there's a lot of interest in Wales for that, but also for hybrid technology, and we'll hear a bit more about that opportunity from Chris. So on to the feasibility study, which we were delighted that the Cabinet Secretary was able to announce the funding that we've managed to secure, and it's an opportunity for me just to formally thank Amanda and the team at WEFO for all of their support in getting us this far, and also to John at Welsh Government. Without both of those organisations, we would not be in this situation, and we potentially would have had to have surrendered the lease. So I'm very grateful for this funding. So the feasibility study basically will enable us to gain a much better understanding of what the industry requires. We need to make sure that what we build is fit for purpose, so there will be a lot of industry dialogue, particularly with the kind of target technology developers. As I've said, we'll be looking at wave, floating wind and hybrid technologies, and it comprises two elements. So there'll be a technical feasibility study that will develop an outline design for the grid infrastructure and the site layout. It will understand the actual characteristics of the site, and it will also, importantly, alongside, look at the commercial viability of the demonstration zone. I'm sure there is a technical solution for this site, but it needs to be able to wash its face financially, and that's one thing I have definitely learned in operating the Wave Hub site in Cornwall. So those two important strands will be progressed during the course of this year, which then ultimately will enable us to have a strong business case, I hope, to be able to take the site forward. And the Swansea Bay City deal announcement last week with the Prime Minister and the Welsh First Minister signing that document was a really exciting chance for us to see that there is a direction that we can go with support from UK and Welsh Government to be able to take this into the next stage and hopefully build the demonstration zone. So throughout this year, we will be much more actively engaged with you all. We will certainly need to start our discussions with stakeholders. We'll be working with NRW and starting the scoping phase. And hopefully, beginning of 2018, we will know exactly what the plan is for the demonstration zone, and we'll have a clear programme and cost for taking it forward. So I was just going to leave you with just some lessons learned from our Wave Hub site that we will now be applying to Pembrokeshire, which, as you can see from this map, is actually not that far away. It might take quite a while for us to drive around from Cornwall to Pembrokeshire, but they are relatively close proximity, these two sites, and the supply chain in both of those areas, I'm sure, will be able to work with us. So important lessons, regular feedback from industry. We have had to make sure that Wave Hub continue to be fit for purpose, and the only way to do that is to keep engaging with you, coming to events like this. We need to make sure we're adapting to changing market conditions, and we've made a number of additional investments in the Wave Hub infrastructure since it was built in 2010 to make sure that we were still able to provide the site and the infrastructure that the industry requires. And we need to make sure in our feasibility study that actually we're doing the same with the Pembrokeshire site, that it's future-proof for the next 20, 30, 40 years. It's a 45-year lease. I've mentioned how important it is to make sure that the technical solution is commercially viable. For those who might be preparing bids at the moment for the feasibility study, that interaction is really key. I've put size does matter because we are now seeing that increasingly sites are needing to plan for much larger scale development. So we will be making sure that we factor that into the demo zone. And then lastly, keyword collaborate. We have learnt so much from collaborating with partners across the sector, and we know there are still so many lessons for us still to learn, and I hope we can continue to engage and work with you all during the course of the next 12 months. Thank you.